Most people will never become unbreakable, not because life was too hard on them, not because they weren't strong enough, not because they were unlucky. They will never become unbreakable because they never let anything test them long enough to find out. They confused comfort with safety, avoidance with peace, and stillness with control. They will wake up at 60, 70, 80 years old and realize the years didn't disappear. They were traded quietly, one small avoidance at a time, for a version of safety that was never actually safe. Let's talk about what it really takes to become unbreakable. There is a threshold every person crosses or never crosses, and almost no one names it. Most people are too comfortable to find it. They arrange their entire lives around avoiding the one sensation that could transform them, the sensation of being tested. The Old Norse called it the forging, the process by which raw metal becomes a blade. The Stoics called it the obstacle, the very thing standing in your way, which they insisted was also the way itself. Civilizations separated by oceans and centuries arrived independently at the same conclusion. The self you are looking for is not found, it is forged. That is the first law. Strength is not given, it is earned through friction. You are not searching for a hidden version of yourself sitting quietly somewhere, waiting to be discovered. You are being shaped, the way pressure shapes coal into something that can cut glass. The sculptor doesn't find the statue lying finished under the stone. The blacksmith doesn't find the blade lying finished inside the ore. Something has to happen to the raw material first. Heat, pressure, repetition, removal. The question then is not what softness you need to add to your life. The question is what friction you have been avoiding. Every person who has ever become formidable did so by walking directly into the exact thing that could break them and coming out reshaped instead. So, what is this unbreakable state we're describing? It isn't confidence. It isn't fearlessness. It isn't the absence of doubt. History is full of confident, fearless, doubt-free people who folded the instant real pressure arrived, and full of terrified, uncertain, quietly shaking people who did not break when it mattered. Being unbreakable is the capacity to keep functioning, keep choosing, keep moving, while everything in you is screaming to stop. That is the definition. Hold on to it. Keep functioning, meaning the output does not stop, even while the internal experience is chaos. Keep choosing, meaning you are still making decisions, not simply reacting. Keep moving, meaning direction persists even when speed collapses to nearly nothing. When all three of these are present at once, braking becomes almost impossible. Not because the pressure disappears, because you've built something the pressure cannot reach. The strongest people who have ever lived felt this exact same pull. Every single one of them. The astronaut who nearly aborted the mission out of fear wrote about it openly decades later. The novelist who is remembered as fearless described in private letters being terrified of every blank page for his entire career. The general remembered for his composure admitted after the war ended that his hands shook every single morning before battle. The difference was never the absence of fear. The difference is what they did with their hands still shaking. That is the third law. Courage is not the removal of fear. Courage is action that includes it. When the astronaut climbed back into the capsule, he was not fearless in that moment. He had already decided long before launch who he needed to be in order to complete the mission, and that decision carried him past the point where feelings alone would have stopped him. This is why waiting to feel ready is a trap. Feelings ask, is this safe right now? Identity asks, is this who I've decided to become? Build the second correctly, and the first stops being able to run the show. Now, let's talk about attention, because almost everyone misunderstands what it actually is. You do not lack focus, you lack a filter. Every person alive is bombarded by roughly the same volume of incoming noise, competing demands, notifications, other people's emergencies dressed up as your own. Marcus Aurelius had it, Florence Nightingale had it, you have it. The real question was never how much noise exists. The question is what you choose to let inside the boundary. Here's a number worth sitting with. On an average day, most people check their phones somewhere around 100 times. If each check pulls your attention for even 30 seconds, that's nearly an hour a day spent not thinking, not building, not becoming, simply reacting to whatever arrived first. Multiply that across a year, and you are looking at hundreds of hours quietly handed over to whichever notification happened to arrive loudest, not whichever thought actually mattered most. The unbreakable ones guard their attention the way a soldier guards a border, not anxiously, deliberately. They know exactly what is allowed across the line and why. Every input is either building the structure or eroding it. There is no neutral input. Now, the question this entire piece has been circling toward: how do you actually build this? First, choose your terrain. Unbreakability is never general. There is no such thing as being generally resilient at everything, all at once, forever. You are not trying to withstand every possible pressure life could apply. You are training to withstand the specific pressure that matters to the life you are trying to build. The mistake most ambitious people make is trying to armor themselves against everything and ending up armored against nothing. You must choose your terrain. That choice will feel like a loss because in a real sense, it is one. Every domain you commit to strengthening is a domain you are choosing not to strengthen elsewhere. When you decide to build unshakable focus as a craftsman, you are choosing not to spread that same focus across 10 other pursuits. That narrowing is not a limitation of strength. It is the mechanism by which strength is built at all. Choose your terrain. Train there relentlessly. Go deep enough that pressure, which would flatten someone untrained, barely registers with you at all. Consider the explorer Ernest Shackleton, who lost his ship to the Antarctic ice and still brought every single one of his men home alive, not because the situation improved, but because he refused to let his crew's spirit collapse before their circumstances did. Consider the composer who went completely deaf and kept writing symphonies he would never hear performed, trusting an inner sense of sound that no longer existed anywhere outside his own mind. Consider the prisoner who spent decades in a cell and walked out not bitter, but building, because he understood that they could take his freedom, but they could not take his direction. None of them were unbreakable because nothing touched them. They were unbreakable because they decided in advance what would not be taken. That is the second law. Resilience is decided before the crisis, not during it. The people who hold together under pressure are not improvising bravery in the moment. They already decided, long before the storm arrived, who they were going to be inside it. Now, here is the uncomfortable question almost nobody asks out loud. Why does almost everyone break, bend, or quietly give up long before they reach their actual limit? Because there is a trade most people are unwilling to make. You have to trade the illusion of control for the reality of growth. Every single day, that illusion is working against you in ways you don't notice. The nervous system was not built for growth, it was built for survival. For hundreds of thousands of years, the organisms that stayed cautious, stayed small, stayed within the known boundary. Those were the ones who lived long enough to reproduce. Boldness got you killed more often than it got you fed. So your body inherited a bias towards staying exactly where it already is, and for most of human history, that bias kept you alive. But in a world where the next meal isn't in question, that same ancient wiring isn't protecting you anymore. It's just keeping you small. Every single day, your mind will negotiate with you. It will say, wait until you feel ready. It will say, this isn't the right time. It will say, rest today, push tomorrow. And every time you listen, you are not being wise. You are quietly, comfortably, incrementally disappearing. Second, protect your edge. Unbreakability does not grow from comfort. It grows in the space between what you can currently withstand and what you are being asked to withstand. That space is your edge. You have to maintain it deliberately. This means consistently choosing challenges slightly beyond your current capacity, not catastrophically beyond. That produces collapse, not growth, slightly beyond. Physiologists call this adaptive overload. Athletes call it progressive resistance. The old monastic traditions called it the discipline of the cell, the deliberate, chosen discomfort that builds an inner steadiness nothing external can touch. Different languages pointing at the identical mechanism. You must remain slightly uncomfortable on purpose, indefinitely. The moment your current level of pressure starts to feel easy is the exact moment your edge has started to dull. Third, control your inputs. What surrounds you becomes what you're made of. This isn't a metaphor. It's closer to a law of nature. The mind you have in 5 years is being assembled right now, out of the conversations, content, and company you're currently allowing near you. Fill that space with shallow noise, and you will build a shallow capacity to withstand pressure. The strongest minds throughout history were relentless about what they let in. Leonardo studied anatomy, hydraulics, flight, and music side by side because he understood that resilience of thought comes from range, not narrowness. Study people who have already withstood what you are training to withstand. Surround yourself even at a distance with those who refuse to break. Your environment is not decoration around your growth, it is the material your growth is made from. Fourth, treat every fracture as instruction. Nothing that has ever become strong got there without first cracking somewhere. The record producer who became legendary was fired from his first 3 jobs. The athlete remembered as flawless missed more attempts than almost anyone else who ever played the sport, and said so openly, without shame. That isn't an inspirational footnote, that's the actual mechanism. A crack is not proof that something is broken. A crack is information about exactly where the next reinforcement needs to go. The person who treats every failure as a verdict will stop the moment it hurts. The person who treats every failure as a blueprint will simply keep building indefinitely. The question after every setback is never, should I stop? The question is, what does this show me? Fifth, extend your horizon. The ones who become unbreakable think in decades, not days. Mama, when you believe what you're building today will still matter 20 years from now, difficulty stops having power over you. Becoming unbreakable isn't an event, it's a direction you keep choosing, in steps sometimes enormous and sometimes barely visible. The becoming is the reward, not whatever follows it. The felt experience of standing in real pressure and not breaking becomes part of who you are. So the real question was never, can you become unbreakable? Every person alive already has that capacity. The real question is whether you're willing to pay for it. Every morning the alarm goes off and staying in bed feels reasonable. Every night the work isn't finished, but rest feels justified anyway. There is no neutral setting. You are either being forged or quietly going soft. Start now.